All right, we're going to create a game in Scratch that is similar to this one, where we have an object that's falling from the sky and you're trying to get to it in time before it gets down to the bottom. Okay, we're going to start by getting rid of the sprite that they have in the default program of the cat. So we hover over the sprite and click the trash can. And now you are going to choose your own sprite, and we are going to search from one for the ones that are available through Scratch. So pick whichever character you would like to be in your game. And after you pick the sprite, you can resize your sprite if needed, make it larger or smaller. Make sure your sprite is along the bottom half of the stage somewhere. I'm going to add a backdrop. So in the backdrop area, we're going to search, choose a backdrop that Scratch offers us. So pick whatever background you would like to use. The next thing that we want to do is to control our sprite to move whenever we use our right or left arrow keys. So the first thing we're going to do is to go to our events category. We're going to drag over when the space is pressed. Now, instead of it being the space bar, I want to use the right and left arrow keys. So for the first one, I'm going to choose right arrow. Under motion, I'm going to take the move 10 steps, drag it over, and I can decrease that to make it a little bit harder of a gain. And then I also want to add the code to have the sprite move when the left arrow is pressed. So I go back to events. When the left arrow is pressed, it's going to move the opposite direction. So instead of 5 steps, it's going to be -5. Next, we need to add another sprite that's going to be our object that falls from the sky. So again, we're going to choose a sprite and we're going to search for the choices that they give us through Scratch. So find an object that you would like to fall from the sky. Then we're going to position our sprite somewhere along the top portion of our canvas. Now to control that sprite, make sure that you've selected the sprite that's below the canvas, and you're going to add the following code. Under Events, when the flag is clicked, go to the Motion category and choose Go to X and Y. Change your X variable to -1 and your Y variable to 130. This code would actually make that sprite go to that exact location, but to make it continually moving around, we need to add a little bit more code to this. So under Motion, we want to change Y by -1. And then let's put that in again, change Y by -1, change Y by -1, and let's do it one more time. Now in coding, instead of us having to put change Y by -1 over and over and over, we can actually create a forever loop. So if we go to our control section, then we can take the forever and drag it over and attach it to our go to X and Y. And then we can actually take these extra 3, change Y by -1 that we don't need, and drag it off to get rid of that. So now we have a forever loop that this will forever change by -1 until the game is over. We also, under variables, need to set our score to 0. So let's take set my variable to 0. Now, in order to change this to score, we have to make that variable. So under my variable category, I'm going to click make a variable. I want to name that variable score. This is going to be for all sprites. Click OK. So now we have a score added to our list, and under my variable, we can now change that to score. So the game is going to start with a score of 0 whenever we start it. You'll also notice on your canvas that you now have a scorekeeper on the canvas, which will show the score as we progress throughout the game. Next, we want to add some conditionals. We want the score to actually increase if the sprite that you chose catches it. This conditional is called an if statement. So let's add a little bit more coding to our sprite that will be falling from the sky. Under control, we're going to take the if then statement, drag it into our forever loop. Let's take the change by -1 and move it below our if. Now in this shape here, if something then, anything that is this shape can go into this space. So let's look under sensing, and we want to use the touching code. So we drag that into that space, and it's going to snap to it. And we're going to change that to if it is touching my ghost, and you would choose whatever sprite you chose, then something's going to happen. So when it touches the ghost, go back to your variables. You want to change the score by 1 point. Now let's test this out to see how it looks so far. So we click our green flag, and we notice that our sprite's falling from the sky. We can use our right and left arrow keys to catch it. And notice my score is continually going up every time it's getting close to my sprite or even touching the sprite. And is that really what we want this game to do? Not really. So computers do what we tell them to do. So now we have to add some more code for this to actually be correct. We want the sprite that's falling from the top of the canvas to reset whenever it touches the sprite. So in order to reset it, we're going to make sure that we have the sprite that's falling selected, and we're going to add even more code to what we have here. If you look under the motion category, we're going to use the go to X and Y and put that under our change score by 1. Now, in these areas that have these numbers, we can also put shapes in there as long as they match the shape. So go to your operators category and take the pick random 1 to 10, drag it into that first oval, and we're going to change it to pick random -235 to 235, and change your Y axis to 130. Now if we test our game out, As it's falling and we're using our right and left arrows, every time it touches the sprite, we get 1 point and it bounces back to the top and lets us start back over. However, my sprite that's falling from the sky is going so incredibly slow that this game is impossible to lose. So we want to make it a little bit more challenging. Make our sprite as it falls from the sky go faster. We want to edit the sprite that's falling. So looking at the code at the very bottom, change by -1. As we increase that number, it gets harder. So if we change it to -5, for example, test that out. You can see it's a little bit harder to get to the sprite in time, and it could be possible that you could end up losing the game. Okay, so you want to make it challenging but not too difficult. The last thing we want to do is to add our text that when the sprite doesn't catch the thing falling from the sky and it hits the ground, that the player knows that they lost. So we need to add the sprite for the text. On this example, we're going to actually paint the sprite. In the window that comes up, we're going to use our text tool, and you will click on your canvas and type, "You lost." Now with your black pointer tool, you're going to position that in the center of the canvas, and then you need to double click on the text to be able to edit the font style, the font color, and size can be changed by dragging the box that's there to the size that you would like it. Now position the sprite on the canvas where you would like the text to show up when the game is lost. And now we're going to go back to our code tab that we see at the top. And we need to add some code to this sprite that we just created. So make sure that the text sprite is the one that's active. And under events, when the flag is clicked, go to the looks category, and we want to hide it. So when the game first starts, we don't want that text to show up. Now, if you lose though, there's certain things that has to happen. Next, if the sprite that is at the top of the stage gets near the bottom of the stage, we want to check to see if we should broadcast a message. So we're going to add the following code to the sprite that is falling from the canvas. Go to the control category and take the if-then statement, drag it below our other if statement that we have there, and take your change y by -5 and move that down. In the operators category, we're going to use the shape of something is less than 50. We're going to drag that into our if-then statement, change 50 to -175. Now in this first position, we're going to look under the motion category, and we're going to take the Y position and drag that over into the oval. So if the Y position is less than -175, then something is going to happen. We want it to broadcast a message. Now the sprites can communicate by passing messages. One sprite will broadcast the message, and the other sprites can listen for it and react when they receive it. So that's what we're going to do now. So with this same sprite, we're going to look under the control category, And we're going to take the broadcast message and drag that into our if statement. And we want it to broadcast that if it's lost. So notice lost is not an option here, so we want to create a new message. And we're going to name this lost. Click OK. So it's going to broadcast lost. And then we need to stop the script. So we'll take under the control category this stop this script. Now we need to program the sprite that has our text to receive the message from the one that's falling. So we're going to click on that sprite. And in our code, we're going to go to the events category. And then we're going to take the code when I receive lost. There's that broadcast. So when I receive that, go to the looks category. You're going to show, and then under control, you're going to stop all. If we test the game out then, it falls faster, it's harder to catch, and I really did lose that time because I didn't get there in time. So our game works. So you have just created your first game in Scratch, and just think of the endless possibilities of what you could do with this fun software.